Let's start off talking about the tools that we're going to use today, and it is impossible to do any kind of testing without wondering about your IDE. And for that, I'm going to start off talking about WebStorm. Now, I should say if you're a .NET developer and you use Visual Studio, then you might be less interested in this part. But if you're a regular Node developer, I want to show you what's out there as far as what can help you write tests and execute those tests. And you have to start with WebStorm. It is amazing. I really like it. It's cheap. Look at that, 49 euro, which translates to just about $49 right now to US prices. It's got a ton of features, including the ever-wanted IntelliSense or code completion. It's got little helpers that will help you write better JavaScript. It's got inspectors and linters, and you can use snippets. You can use so many things. I really recommend WebStorm. It's a great tool. That said, I won't be using WebStorm today. I'll be using Sublime Text. This is one of my go-to editors, especially for doing screencasts. It's beautiful to look at, and it's really fast. So that's what I'll be using. Works great with Node. It's got lovely code completion, and if you're curious, you can buy it for $70, which oddly is more than WebStorm, and I'm not sure what the deal is with that. There's also Atom from the GitHub folks. If you want to try something other than a big IDE and you want to use just a regular text editor, Sublime or Atom are great choices. Atom is free, and it's from the folks at GitHub. It works on top of Google's Chrome engine, and the only downside to using Atom is it's just a little bit slow on startup, but the editing process is rather fast. It also has excellent package and theming support. I really can't recommend Atom enough. Any of these text editors that you want to use are just amazing. So pick one if you're not using a big IDE like Visual Studio and install it. Next up, of course, is Node. Head over to Node.js.org, and there you'll see the current install. As of the recording of this screencast, it is version 0.12.0. I have Node version 0.12.0 installed, and I know this because I opened up my command line and typed in node-v. Also, after you install Node, please be sure you have npm installed, and you can do that just by typing npm. Our testing framework today is going to be Mocha.js. You could read more about it at mocha.js.org, written by none other than Mr. T.J. Hollowaychuk, a name you're going to get to know when you start working in the Node universe. Mocha is fun, and we're going to see more about it in just a bit. For our mocking and spy framework, we're going to use Sinon.js. And for working with dates, we're going to be using Moment.js. We are going to install all of this in due course. I just wanted to introduce them up front to you. Speaking of installations, let's take care of installing Mocha now that we have npm and Node installed. And to do this, we just say npm install Mocha, and I'm going to use the -g flag to make sure that it is global. In other words, I want to be able to access the Mocha runtime from everywhere. Just like that, I have Mocha installed. And you can see when I just type in Mocha, it's looking for a test directory. Can't find one. Believe it or not, that error means that we did things right. It is installed. Well, let's just jump right to it. I'm going to go into my demo directory here, and I'm going to take a look at all the files I have, which are none except for that annoying .ds store, the Mac nugget. Thank you very much. I'm going to make a directory for our project, call it Rocket Shop, and let's change directories into Rocket Shop. Inside of here, I have nothing. It is completely blank because I just created it. What I'm going to want to do now is to make a test directory so that Mocha can run. There it is. All it needs is a test directory with some tests in it or not, as you can see, and we can run it to make sure that it works. It's working. That's awesome. So let's see another way that you can run Mocha. You don't have to run it globally. If you want to run it locally, you sure can. Here, instead of using the -g flag to install things globally, I just said install Mocha and save that reference in our package.json using save dev. So what does this buy me? Well, let's take a look at our directory structure now. Inside, I now have a Node modules directory as well as a test directory. And inside that Node modules directory, if we take a look, you will see we have a single directory called Mocha. Inside of here, we have bin, images, lib, and so on. But if we take a look inside of bin, which is a special executable directory, you can see we have Mocha, as well as a semi-hidden _Mocha directory. Those things are not terribly important, but what you should know is if we take our way all the way back up into our Rocket Shop project directory, I can execute the Mocha runtime straight away. So if I just say, hey, command line, execute node modules mocha bin mocha. And there it is. It ran mocha for me. Why would I even want to do this? Well, if we take a look at the npm commands at my disposal, we have a bunch of them in here that I can override, and one of them is test. Why do we care about this? That's a nice little bit of abstraction on top of executing the tests in our project. In other words, when we want to run tests now, we'd have to type in mocha. But what if we change things later on? We want to add some flags and so on. We would have to communicate that to the rest of the team and to everybody else who runs our project and wants to run our tests. However, if we just script out npm test and put our commands inside of that, it makes things a little bit easier. Let's take a look. So to do this, I first want to make sure I initialize an npm package inside of RocketShop. And I do that using npm init. It's going to ask me a few questions here, specifically what version, what's the name of the module, and what's a friendly description that others can reference. And then we get to the test command. Right now, it senses that mocha is installed, and so it's defaulted that for me. If that wasn't there, I would just put mocha. But what I can also do is I can say, hey, execute this instead. Node modules mocha bin mocha. Run mocha locally, not globally. Now that I've done that, I can just add in my author and license information, and we'll say yes. So what did we just do here? Well, basically this created a package.json for our Node project, and hopefully you know what that means. If you don't, then you might want to go review some Node courses here at Pluralsight. Well, that's interesting. Here I have a package.json. What did this buy me? Well, now I can just do npm test, and as you can see, it executes mocha locally. If I want to pass in some special flags, I sure can, and we'll take a look at that in the next clip. For now, let's charge ahead and install the things that we're going to need. Next up is going to be Sinon. We're going to use this for mocking and stubbing later on. Here, I want to make sure that I use the save dev flag. This is going to save Sinon in our package.json as a developer dependency. Next up, I'm going to be working with dates. So let's install that straight away. And here, I'm going to use -- save. This is going to be a dependency for the entire project, not just for development. All right, well, when I run mocha, everything is working really well. And when I run npm test, same thing, it's running really well, except now it's running with a local binary instead of the global one. And by the way, I want to point out, if you're following along at home and you're wondering why I can type L and show the contents of a directory instead of ls-la, that's because I have L aliased to that command. It makes things a little bit easier on my fingers in typing. So let's make sure that everything is wired together really well. And for this, I'll use Vim and I'll just crack out a throwaway spec. And I will mention that this is the only time I'll be using Vim. If you don't like Vim, well, don't worry, it's the only time you're going to see it. So what I want to do is I want to throw together some basic mocha functionality just to make sure everything is going off the way I expect it to. Here, I'm using some basic mocha syntax. This is two keywords that you're probably going to use 95% of the time: describe and it. Describe is basically a block. Inside of that block, you're going to have bits of functionality. How you put that together is sort of up to you. Here, I am doing typical behavior-driven design. I have a feature as my outer block, and I want to describe that feature in terms of scenarios. In other words, when I do this, what happens? And then the it blocks in between, those describe the behavior of the feature for a given scenario. Now, it's quite a mouthful, a little bit of jargon. Don't worry, we are going to see this in depth. All right, I'm going to use the built-in Node assert library, and here I'm just going to assert true. I just want to make sure that everything goes off the way I expect. Now let's take a look and make sure that mocha is going to execute as we expect. I've quit out of Vim after saving the file, and I run it. Here we have one of the best things about mocha: nicely formatted output that corresponds almost exactly to the blocks that I put together inside of here. In other words, we have a feature, and we have a scenario, and then we have the executable specifications. Very typical BDD stuff. Now, using mocha, as you're going to see, doesn't mean that you have to do BDD. You can do straight up unit testing. But I just wanted to show you the BDD stuff first, because that's what I like the most about mocha. All right, well, before I go any further, let's be good developers here and create a repository, source code repository. And for this, I'll be using Git. I find that Git helps me to think in testing terms quite effectively. In other words, whenever I do a new feature, I'm thinking about different specifications or scenarios, I will often create a branch. I usually will just do a branch per feature, but it's really interesting when your tests reflect your Git history and you go back and you want to know what you did and where it was. Well, it becomes really, really simple to look over your history and figure out how long it took you to make a certain feature. I like it, at least. Anyway, taking a look here, we have nothing, so we need to add everything. I've created a git ignore file and package.json. Notice I am not including node modules. You want to make sure that that is in your git ignore because you do not want node modules included in your Git repository. They tend to be rather large. Moreover, when people download your module, your application, or whatnot, all they have to do is say npm install. npm is smart enough to look at package.json and look at the dependencies that you have when you used npm install --save or save dev. It'll go and grab those things and it'll drop it in your project for you.